Hey, this is Kurt Johnson Savage again. So if you've watched my previous videos, you know that I work out Fridays downtown Chicago, a couple hours, and then on my way home I just talk a little bit about stuff that happened in prison or North Central College in Naperville, where they didn't want to admit me because I was in prison, and one thing led to another, and I found out that school covers up rapes. But that's another video. If you want to check it out, it's on the list there, YouTube. So tonight, it's mid-October, it's turning cold. I just had another amazing workout. I got this personal trainer. She's really good. I mean, I've been lifting weights for years, ever since I was in high school. You know, I played sports in high school and stuff like that, lifted weights in college. So I know how to work out, but it's always good to get another person's point of view or to try new things. So believe it or not, as crazy as it sounds, when I come downtown Chicago on Fridays, I actually do Pilates. And that makes me laugh because that's something I never thought I'd be interested in. You know, the little equipment, like these benches, I guess I'm learning about this. I've been doing this for like 2 months now. Something's called the Reformer, I guess, and then there's one called the Cadillac Tower or something like that. So basically it's springs, and you either lay on a carriage, kind of like a little movable platform, and you use your legs or your abs to move and work out. But you know what? I tried it because there's no healthcare in prison, and if you survive prison, it is a fucking miracle. Okay, they have doctors there, but they don't do anything, and all they do, they just exist to fill a slot so they can say they have healthcare, but they don't really do anything. That's a whole nother story, but people are dying of cancer in there and easily preventable things. I've seen people have chest pains and complain about it to the nurse, and they die because they don't do anything about it. They just watch you die, basically. You could notify him hours in advance, like happened to this one guy that I knew, and they could have taken him to the hospital. He'd still be alive today, probably. But basically, they just let him die. So anyway, now that I'm out of prison, you know, I'm really on my health. I go to the doctor, preventive medicine, physicals. I'm taking care of any dental problems I had, stuff like that. So one thing I do is, you know, I'm working on all the body systems and the muscles and the joints and everything. So Pilates is really good for that. I was really surprised. It really works. The girl that works with me has been doing it for a long time, and you know, showing me things that I never would have imagined, like exercises and things that really work good. So, you know, and I think during the COVID lockdown, or the whatever you want to call it, it's not really a lockdown right now, right? People are out and about, going to restaurants and stuff. I don't know how wise that is. But, you know, it's a good time to reassess and kind of catch up on things that you should catch up on. So that's kind of what I'm doing, you know, getting in better shape than I was before and working out more, things like that. So today I figured I would talk a little bit about like prison lockdowns, solitary confinement, what that is. And, you know, the reason I'm thinking about it is because of the COVID lockdown, right? When COVID first became a problem, what was that, St. Patrick's Day, right, in the Chicago area. And, you know, I didn't even know. I had heard a little bit about it. I remember back in March, right, coming up on St. Patrick's Day weekend, which is a huge thing in the Chicago area where I'm at. You know, I didn't even really know if it was going to be a problem because they had that SARS virus, what was that, a decade ago or something? And it wasn't even a problem, really. You know, there was a few people that were affected by it, but it didn't turn into a major outbreak like we have now. So I was in a bar in Hinsdale, Fuller House, amazing food. If you ever get a chance after COVID is over, Fuller House in Hinsdale, probably the best food I've ever had. So I'm in there, and they said, yeah, we're going to be closed down for St. Patrick's Day weekend. I'm like, what are you talking about? And they said that, you know, all the restaurants and bars in Illinois were going to shut down before St. Patrick's Day. And there was some rule or something, they had to be shut down by a certain day. It was really weird because some of them were shutting down a day early because they were open till like 2 in the morning, and there were other ones that closed before midnight, so they were actually open the next night, if that makes sense. So then we went on this lockdown, right? And people are afraid, rightfully so, to go anywhere. You don't want to catch COVID and die, right? You don't want to, even if you don't die, you have these horrible symptoms. I don't know anybody personally, but, you know, I've read like everybody else, like you and I have, you know, brain problems, respiratory problems, heart damage, just all kinds of things can happen. So you may survive it, you probably will survive it, but better not to get it in the first place, right? So at least for a few months, everybody was on a lockdown, and now it seems like everybody got tired of it. That's something I want to address. From my point of view, having done 25 years in custody altogether, you know, parole, house arrest, prison, it was all together a little over 25 years. And so we had the lockdown. People were like, okay, we got to do this. And then after a few weeks, you know, people are starting to complain and they can't take it, which, you know, I understand 100%. And it's interesting to me, though, because I have absolutely no problem with the COVID lockdown, because to me, you know, I'm not trying to be an asshole when I say this, right? But I've been in solitary confinement for a year and a crack, okay? In prison, maximum security prisons. It's just you, a couple books, a sink and a toilet, and that's it. For a year, I've done that. So I can handle a COVID lockdown, you know, and I just want to tell people, you know, maybe it'll help, maybe it won't. You know, anything I say or in my books that are going to be coming out, it's just, you know, take what you can if it helps at all. You may think I'm an asshole. That's totally cool. I'm just telling you, like, what helps me get through things. And when I first went to jail and prison, I didn't even know about these lockdowns or whatever they call it. So every jail and prison, they have this little feature called the lockdown, right? So that means everybody has to go back into their cells, and either the guard locks the door, or sometimes you just shut your own door and it automatically locks. And they'll do that because maybe there's a fight, like if you're in a jail, there's a fight broke out, either between just a couple people or some gangs got in a fight or whatever. So for the security and the safety of the institution is what they tell you, which is true, you know, you have to go in your cell and lock down. Okay, so they call it a lockdown, right? Everybody in the jail is locked in their cells. They do a count to make sure everybody's accounted for. Everybody that's in there is in there. Nobody's escaped. And then they take care of the problem, whatever it is. It could be a fight, a stabbing in a prison or whatever. You know, I was in Will County Jail, kind of a day camp, not really that bad of a jail like Cook County Jail. You know, murders happen all the time, very dangerous. I've never actually been in there. I was like in a substation once for a traffic problem. But, so in prison now, okay, I was at Stateville Prison in Illinois. That was the first one, and that's one of the harder prisons, you know, max joint. And we were on lockdown about 50% of the time. I was there for 2 years of my total time. And you go on a lot, there'd be a fight or a stabbing, not a fight really, fights happen all the time, nobody gives a shit about that, but, you know, somebody could be killed, murdered, you know, stabbed, and you go on lockdown. Everybody would be locked in their cells, and the guard staff, they have a special section called Internal Affairs, which is a bad name because you think that they check on themselves or they check on other cops. Like, that's the myth. I think that police departments have internal affairs divisions that keep discipline and do investigations of their own cops. From what I've seen, it's all bullshit. What they do is they cover up for cops and they try to blame civilians for it. In prison, they have internal affairs in the Illinois Department of Corrections. They don't give a shit what cops do. Cops could break the laws, murder people, beat the fuck out of people. Internal Affairs isn't going to do shit about it. What Internal Affairs is in Illinois prisons is a cover-up unit, and they will blame the prisoners or somehow shift the blame to somebody who's been convicted of a crime, right? It's easy to do because everybody's going to assume that, yeah, that's the bad guy. Shift the blame off the officers, off the guards, onto one of the convicts that's in prison. That's all they do. They don't give a fuck about guards doing anything, and they'll cover up for them. So you think, oh, Internal Affairs, they'll do the right thing. Fuck no. They're going to blame you, and they'll do investigations, but it's investigations of the prisoners and just trying to blame them for the craziest little shit. It's unbelievable. So anyway, that's what Internal Affairs does at Stateville or any other prison in Illinois. You go, and I imagine across the country, you go into lockdown, somebody got stabbed. They probably do try to figure out who did it, But I've seen times where they blame the wrong person, or I don't know. It's just like any other police thing. They don't really give a fuck who actually did it, as long as they clear the books and they, find someone to blame for it, right? So, but my point is about these lockdowns in prison, it was so weird because somebody could be straight up turned into hamburger, just stabbed 100 times. We'd be on lockdown for like 2 days. Other times, we'd be on lockdown for a month if somebody got stabbed and they weren't even killed. And it was just weird. It was random. I guess maybe they didn't know who did it, or they're trying to calm things down, or I don't know. There was no rhyme or reason to it. And you never knew what could happen and when. Anything can happen at any time in a maximum security prison. That's one thing I learned, and that's one thing I kind of live by now. You got to be ready for anything. I know it's a weird way to look at stuff out here in the civilian world, but if you adopt that attitude, anything can happen at any time, you're going to be ready. So that's one great benefit I got out of the 25 years in prison is nothing. I mean, I would say nothing's going to surprise me. I might be a little surprised, I guess is the only word, right? But I feel like I'm ready for anything. I handled 25 years in maximum security prisons and a bunch of unbelievable bullshit. And now I feel like, regular civilian life is a piece of cake, more or less. And I'm not downplaying COVID. I feel horrible about, 200,000 some people have died. Anybody who gets it, I really sympathize. But as far as the lockdown is, for me, I posted on my Twitter when, right St. Patrick's Day weekend, I went to the grocery store to stock up a little bit like everybody else. I didn't buy 100 rolls of toilet paper or anything, just, my usual 6 rolls. And I scored some paper towels, like 1 pack. That's all I need. I'm not going to, even if there's more there, I don't take 2. I think once I took 2, in the past few months. I just take 1. That's all I need. And that's fair, leave some for somebody else, right? So I had like 1 set of paper towels. I didn't even think I got toilet paper that first time. I got some bananas and stuff like that. But, I'm looking at my cart and I have yogurt, I have steaks, to put in the freezer. Like I got 3 or 4 steaks, not hoarding, like I said, just enough for like a week or so. And to me, a COVID lockdown is much easier for me to handle because of everything I've been through in prison, right? I mean, it's not difficult at all to me. I can pick up pizzas. I can, eat whatever I want. I have a fully equipped weight room at my house. In prison, some prisons don't even have weights. The thing about guys getting big in prison, lifting weights, is kind of a myth because some prisons, at least in Illinois, they don't even have weights. They took them all out because they're afraid of big, strong criminals, right? And the food sucks. You're not getting enough protein. You're not getting the right macronutrients or whatever to get bigger. If you could just live through it, you're doing great. If you could just live through prison. So for me, I have a unique perspective because the lockdowns really aren't a big deal. And if you look at the results of getting COVID, to me, it's an easy choice. Stay home as much as possible. And that's what I've been doing. I mean, I do get bored like everybody else, but one time I was in segregation. It used to be called solitary confinement. There's people in cells next to you, so I don't know how solitary it ever was. I think even back in the 60s, there would be somebody in a cell next to you. You could talk to them through the bars or whatever, through the vent. But I was in solitary confinement for a year one time, and I told my family not to visit me because it was about 6 hours away from where they lived, the prison I was at, and you only got an hour visit instead of 4 hours when you're on solitary confinement. So there was no point in them coming 6 hours to see me for an hour and then have to drive all the way back, get a hotel room or whatever. So I did that year without really ever leaving the cell. And thankfully it was a cell with a window. Some don't have windows. So this one had a window. I had fresh air. I had a fan. I froze my ass off because they didn't allow, at that place, they didn't allow thermal underwear. And the heat was incredibly low. I'm guessing it was probably, 50 some degrees in there. And you're just freezing your ass off. Could have been colder, I don't know. But I made underwear out of socks. So I bought a bunch of socks. You could buy those. And I cut the toes. I cut an opening in the toes, and I pulled them up on my legs and my arms to make thermal underwear. So I didn't die in there. But so that was the worst. I mean, I had no TV, right? Obviously, no internet in prison or anything like that. And my neighbors were generally not somebody that would provide an interesting conversation. So after that year, you know, I can do a COVID lockdown at my house with steak and yogurt and weights and internet and my phone. I can do that with no problem. So it's all relative. And you know, I understand you need a little entertainment and all that, but it is going to end at some point, right? They're going to get a vaccine, probably middle of 21, it'll be available. Right now it's October of 20. They'll come up with some treatments, hopefully, and it won't be as much of a problem as it is right now. So right now in October of 20, you know, I'm shocked. These bars are back open. People are mingling. I see them, right? You know, I'm in a parking lot or whatever, maybe picking something up from Home Depot, and there'll be a bar across the street with an outdoor area, and I see people right in each other's faces, and to me it's just too much of a risk, you know. But to each his own. You gotta, whatever you're comfortable with, right? So tonight I am going to meet a friend. I've only done this about 4 times since March. I think this is gonna be time number 5, same friend actually. And we're gonna meet up at a bar that has outdoor seating. And you know, we picked one that's not too crowded, and we did in the past. Maybe get a little something to eat, but I'm keeping it very limited. I do go to the gym, like I said, but the trainer wears a mask, I wear a mask. We're the only ones in there, and we don't really get that close either anyway. So my activities are super limited. But the solitary confinement for a year, I'm not going to deny it was rough. You know, I learned a lot from it. And I don't know, I was in this really horrible prison, and it was very unpleasant, even in population. And so there was a guy next to me that came in. I was in solitary there for about 2 or 3 months, and this guy came in, a white guy, doesn't make a difference, but you know, and he came in the cell next to me, and I just listened. You know, he would be talking to people, or guards would stop by with his paperwork and all that. So from what I gathered, I don't think I ever talked to the guy directly. You know, we didn't know each other, so we just didn't talk. But at that point, I was about halfway through my sentence, so I probably had at least 10 years in, and I had like 8 more to go, you know, for the original murder conviction. And so I've done a long time already, and I've got a long ways to go. This guy had been in for about a year and a half, and he had like a year left, so not that big of a sentence, right? Well, he ended up killing himself. He hung himself in that cell. He was in there about a week, and from what I heard, where he was at in population, there was a white gang, and they were trying to pressure him. I don't know exactly what they wanted him to do or whatever, but they were giving him a hard time. So in that kind of situation, you have a few options, and the way he handled it was called walking yourself. He walked himself to segregation or solitary confinement. And that means you voluntarily go into the punishment place, right, solitary, and you're refusing housing, basically. You're refusing to be in the cell that you've been assigned to. And that's where he was having the problems with the white gang. So he said, okay, I'm not going to live here, so the punishment is you go to segregation, and they know what's going to happen, so you just walk yourself, basically. So he gets in there, and you know, it's part of the problem with the guards and the administrations and all these prisons. They don't give a shit about anybody, any of the prisoners, you know. They feel the prisoners are below them. So they just didn't really help the guy. They didn't really ask him what happened or anything like that. And there's no counselors. There are people called counselors, but they don't do any counseling. What they do is they fill out paperwork if you want to get a transfer, or they can tell you how much time you have left. I mean, just very basic shit. They don't do any counseling. Those are the counselors. So nobody came by and talked to the guy, hey dude, what's up? You know, what can I help you with? Nothing like that. He's got to figure the shit out on his own, just like I did, right? Everybody has to. It's rough. It's, you know, survival of the fittest, basically. So he's in there for a week, and he has a wife and kids at home, and he's worried about them, and he can't use the phone now. He's in segregation, right? So you can write a letter. That's going to take a few days, and then a few days to get back. So he hasn't talked to his family. And I guess the pressure was just too much for him, because he figured, okay, if he goes back out into population, the gang is going to be out there waiting for him, and maybe they're going to hassle him again. So, not knowing any better, the guy took a sheet, and there's a vent in there. There's a vent in every prison cell usually. And to prevent you from like getting into the vents, like maybe trying to escape through the roof or whatever, they have like this, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a very industrial strength chicken wire type thing. So instead of, it's like chicken wire, except it's the thickness of like a thin pencil, the wiring, okay? So there's maybe a 1/2 inch little hole created by this wire. The wire is like a thin pencil. So, and it's really in there, and it's welded in there, and you can't bend it, obviously, so you're not getting in the vent. But what the vent does is it provides a place for people to hang themselves. So they take their sheet, because you have bed sheets, right? And they take their sheet and they slide it through the hole and back out, and then they tie it into this vent, which is high up on the wall, and then they make a noose and they hang themselves. So usually their feet are only like a couple inches off the floor, and so that's what this guy did. He hung himself because he couldn't handle the pressure, and he only had like, I think about a year to go. I don't remember the details. I want to say he had done a 1.5, 2 years, and he had like a year and a half to go. But I mean, I can't even understand it, because you got your family out there waiting for you. But I guess he just didn't have the strength, you know. So he killed himself while I was in solitary confinement there. And then a month later, a guy above me killed himself too. He was a black guy, and I heard him talking to people when he got in there. And this is a month after the white guy killed himself, right? So the black guy had just come in from Joliet, I think, or processing, you know. And he got assigned to his prison, which is the one I'm at, and he was acting up on the bus ride, so they put him in segregation as punishment. So he's up there. So he had done a few years, like on a burglary or something like that previously, and he was out on parole, and he had only been out on parole a few months, and he couldn't find a job or anything, so he robbed a gas station. Okay, he didn't have any money, and this is very common, because when you get out of prison, there are programs, but they're hard to find, and you're just behind the 8 ball 100%. So the guy robbed I'm not justifying it, I'm just telling you how it is. So 70% of people go back to prison when they get out. So the guy had no money, so he robbed the gas station, got arrested. Now he's back on an armed robbery, and he's got about 6 years to do. So he's up there in that cell, and I guess there were some other people in solitary that were making fun of him or yelling at him and stuff. Like maybe some enemies that he had before on his previous bit, right? So now here he is back in prison. He's got these same enemies from his last bit, and he's not too happy about dealing with this all over again. So I did hear people yelling at him, making fun of him, which to me, I don't give a fuck. You know, talk all you want. It does not going to affect me. But I guess it did affect this guy. So he told the guard that he wanted to move, right? Because segregation at this prison had 4 different wings. So you could be in different areas. They could have easily moved them to another section where people aren't going to be yelling at him, right? So he told the guard, I heard this loud and clear. He told the guard, if you don't move me, I'm going to kill myself in 5 minutes. Loud and clear, I heard this. He's above me. I can hear him through the vents, and then there's like a giant, I don't know, open area, and the cells are ringed around it. So he's above me, so I can hear him talking because it's an open area. Oh, there must be a cop here. Okay, so anyway, the guard says, you ain't gonna do shit. Kind of like a country boy guard. He said, you ain't gonna do shit. Well, motherfucker hung himself. Okay, now that's just inexcusable as far as the staff goes, right? Staff doesn't give a fuck in a prison, let me tell you. Those guards, I mean, they are protecting society because they're keeping people in prison. That's the whole goal of it. But the guards are almost like psychopaths in a lot of these prisons. They don't have any feelings at all. I've seen guards that have been raped by prisoners. They've got a real attitude, as you can imagine. They keep working in the prisons because they might have 10 years in and they want to retire. So even though they got raped right in their asshole by an entire gang, they'll stay there and still work in the prison. And obviously they're very hard to deal with because they have a real chip on their shoulder from being raped. Okay, so anyway, this guard, I don't know what his story was, but he said, you ain't gonna do shit. He walked away. The guy hung his sheet. Now, he hung his sheet to the light fixture on the ceiling, which is actually easier way to do it, I guess, because then you can stand on the bunk bed and you can kind of slip off the bunk bed and then you're gonna hang yourself. So that's what he did, and he hung himself. So that was 2 suicides. You can tell how this staff is really up on things. I'm trying to remember, it was Western Illinois Correctional Center in Illinois, but they're all the same. They don't give a fuck. So you had 2 suicides in 2 months. Real great job by the staff. And, the guy said, I'm going to kill myself. Okay, so what you want to do is open a fucking door and put him in, a suicide watch cell somewhere where he doesn't have sheets and he's not going to be able to kill himself. But they don't give a fuck. So the story about that is that, everybody listening, you can handle this lockdown. You can find the inner strength to survive until next June. I know it's rough. I've been there, believe me, and I sympathize. But we can do it together. And hopefully we're going to get some changes. Politics, it's useless to talk about. Nobody ever changes their mind. But hopefully we'll get some kind of program to handle the COVID, and we'll get some medical advances and everything. So for me, I just lift weights. My diet is so much healthier now. On this lockdown, I was going to my favorite restaurant up to 3 times a week and gorging. So I've lost like 15 pounds. I'm way more toned up. The abs are showing. Everything's good. And I work on my cars, do landscaping around my house, and work on my businesses and stuff. So, just hang in there. You can do it. It's not a big deal. You don't have to kill yourself. Just if you have family, connect with them and stay in touch. And hopefully we'll all survive this, right? Okay, this is Kurt Johnson Savage. I'm out.